What if you were there during the most famous trial in history, the trial that led to the crucifixion of Jesus Christ? But what if, instead of the usual stories, we had a secret letter that revealed a hidden side of what happened? The letter was written by a person who was familiar with all the players involved, yet harbored an unwavering fear that something far more significant was at risk. This narrative recounts the letter written by Claudia Procula, the wife of Pontius Pilate, the Roman governor who sentenced Jesus to death. Historical records barely mention her, yet her mysterious dreams and desperate warnings to her husband reportedly haunted her for the rest of her life. The letter she wrote is like a window into her world, where fear and prophecy seem to blend together in a way that no one could fully explain. So, what did she see in those terrifying dreams? Why did she implore her husband to spare Jesus' life, despite her duty to remain silent by his side? And why did Pilate, a man with all the power of Rome behind him, feel so powerless against the will of an angry crowd? These are the questions that linger over Claudia's story, like shadows that never quite go away. The letter she wrote is a personal account of the events leading up to the crucifixion, but it's also a tale of fear, guilt, and the strange, unexplainable feeling that she was witnessing something beyond human understanding. Imagine knowing a terrible event was coming, but being unable to stop it. That's the story she left behind. In her letter, she recounts the night before the trial, a night when she couldn't sleep, haunted by visions that seemed to come from another world. She described seeing a man who glowed with a light brighter than the sun, standing on a cloud as if he were ready to judge the world. She saw him separate people into groups, raising the good ones to eternal life and casting the wicked into a sea of fire. And when she awoke, sweating and terrified, she was certain that these dreams were warnings. Warnings that something beyond Rome's control was unfolding. And as the morning light broke over Jerusalem, a city filled with the sounds of chanting crowds and whispering conspiracies, Claudia rushed to find her husband. She begged him to spare this man from condemnation. She told him about her dreams and her fear that condemning this man would bring a curse upon them both. But Pilate, caught between his duty to Rome and the demands of a restless crowd, told her that he was helpless in the face of such powerful hatred. That's where Claudia found herself, standing at the edge of a decision that would echo through the ages. She felt like she was staring into a storm, seeing the lightning flash before it struck. But no one else could see what she saw. Claudia's letter is more than just a historical curiosity. It's a message that reminds us how fear and uncertainty can make even the most powerful feel small. The story shows how sometimes you can't stop a terrible event, but it's also about the mysteries of faith and fate, and how a single decision can change the course of history. On one side, there's a furious crowd demanding justice, or what they believe is justice. On the other hand, there's a man who stands silently, without fear, accused of claiming to be something greater than a mere human. That was the situation for Pontius Pilate, the Roman governor of Judea, in the year 33 AD. This story goes beyond courtroom drama. Her letter reveals a struggle that cuts to the core of what it means to face a moral dilemma, one that can shake a person's soul to the point of terror. Claudia, Pilate's wife, faced her own terrifying inner conflict. She had dreamt of Jesus the night before the trial, seeing him in a vision as a divine figure, like a judge who held the power of life and death. When she woke up, she was so shaken that she sent a message to Pilate, urging him, "Have nothing to do with that righteous man, for I have suffered greatly in a dream because of him." Matthew 27:19. This wasn't just a simple dream. To Claudia, it felt like a warning from beyond, a glimpse into the future where great suffering awaited those who judged this man wrongly. The real question for Pilate wasn't just about whether Jesus was guilty, it was about whether he had the courage to act against the crowd's demands. Pilate's own power was at risk. The Jewish leaders hinted that if he released Jesus, it would mean disloyalty to Caesar. They threatened him, saying, "If you let this man go, you are no friend of Caesar. Anyone who claims to be a king opposes Caesar." John 19:12. This was a dangerous accusation. If word reached Rome that Pilate had allowed a would-be king to live, his career and possibly his life could be over. He could almost see his own downfall, angry letters being sent back to Rome, whispers in the Senate indicating that Pilate was too weak to maintain control over Judea. But he could also hear the warning in his wife's voice, echoing through his thoughts, urging him to spare an innocent life. Trapped between a roaring fire and a cliff's edge, he knew that either way he might fall. Pilate tried to escape his dilemma by offering the crowd a choice between releasing Jesus or a known criminal, Barabbas, hoping they would choose mercy. But they didn't. They chose violence. And Pilate, fearful of a riot, fearful of losing everything, washed his hands in front of the crowd and said, "I am innocent of this man's blood. See to it yourselves." Matthew 27:24. For Claudia, it must have felt like the dream had come true in the worst way. Every shadow, every restless night would remind her of the moment her husband could have changed everything. She believed that their choice had unleashed the divine's wrath and would bring a curse upon their household, a fear that would never truly leave them. In 33 AD, Rome ruled over vast territories, including Judea, where Pilate served as the Roman governor. Roman law was strict, built to maintain order and control over its conquered lands. Pilate's main job was to keep the peace, making sure the people followed the rules and paid their taxes. The Romans prided themselves on their legal system, believing it brought civilization and order to the world. Pilate, as a representative of this system, had the power to judge, imprison, and execute. Pilate accused Jesus of calling himself the King of the Jews when they brought him before him. To the Jewish leaders, this claim was dangerous because it challenged their authority. But to Rome, such a title was more than blasphemy. It suggested a threat to the emperor, a potential leader who might inspire rebellion. In the eyes of Roman law, anyone who claimed kingship without Rome's approval was guilty of treason. But as Pilate questioned Jesus, he quickly realized that this was no ordinary case. Jesus described a kingdom that defied measurement by land or soldiers. He told Pilate, "My kingdom is not of this world." John 18:36, leaving the governor puzzled. Pilate couldn't find a reason to condemn him under Roman law. He even told the crowd, "I find no basis for a charge against him." John 19:4. And yet the pressure from the crowd and the Jewish leaders grew stronger, demanding a harsh sentence. Pilate found himself in a precarious situation. On one hand, his role demanded that he uphold Roman authority and ensure that no one disrupted the fragile peace of Jerusalem during Passover. On the other hand, he faced the unsettling realization that condemning Jesus might mean going against his own sense of justice. But Rome's system was practical, not merciful. Pilate prioritized maintaining order over mercy, even if it meant sacrificing the innocent. While Pilate wrestled with the law of man, Claudia saw something else, a vision that hinted at a deeper, cosmic justice, one that reached far beyond the courts of Rome. In her dreams, she saw Jesus as a judge, surrounded by light, with power that seemed to extend beyond life itself. This wasn't the justice of rules and codes. It was a kind that dealt with the soul, the heart, and the fate of humanity. Claudia's vision of Jesus was not of a prisoner, but of a divine figure, someone who held the ultimate power to judge the living and the dead. To her, this meant that Pilate's decision was not just about one man's fate, but about the destiny of everyone involved, including their own. By condemning Jesus, she feared they would be defying a force beyond human comprehension or control, one that could bring terrible consequences. This sense of divine justice made Claudia's fear more than just a personal anxiety. It became a spiritual alarm, a belief that they were tampering with something far greater than the Roman Empire. Instead of whether Jesus lived or died, she cared about whether they were challenging God's will. In her mind, Divine justice would have the final word, no matter what Pilate or the crowd decided. Even as Pilate tried to reason with the crowd, offering to release Jesus as part of a Passover tradition, the people chose to free Barabbas, a known criminal, instead. Pilate's attempt to balance Roman justice with a gesture of mercy backfired. The crowd's anger only grew, pushing Pilate closer to a decision he didn't want to make. Despite his doubts, Pilate ultimately handed Jesus over for crucifixion, choosing to uphold human law over the unsettling feeling of a deeper justice at play. This story makes us question how far human justice can go when it meets something that feels bigger than anything we can see or touch. Can laws and rules truly decide what is right and wrong when there is a sense that a higher power is involved? It's a question that has haunted people for centuries, and it's one that makes the trial of Jesus more than just a story from the past. It reminds us of times when we must choose between meeting worldly expectations and following our hearts. For Claudia, life in Jerusalem was far from the familiar comfort of Rome. As the spouse of a Roman governor, she transitioned from the splendor of her native land to a realm where people perceived her as an outsider. She describes feeling the distance between herself and the Jewish people, who saw her and Pilate as intruders in their sacred land. This cultural divide meant that while Pilate wielded power over Judea, Claudia lived in the shadows, separated from the local customs and beliefs. Her sense of isolation only deepened as tensions in the city rose. Pilate struggled to maintain control, and Claudia found herself living in a state of constant anxiety, worried about the fragile peace between the Romans and the Jewish people. But the arrival of Jesus in Jerusalem and the trial that followed threw her into a deeper sense of isolation than she had ever known. The rigid, logical world of Roman law and the strange, spiritual visions that haunted her dreams trapped her between two worlds. The letter she wrote hints at this struggle, showing a woman who feels like she's carrying a secret that no one else can see. It's the kind of loneliness that makes every breath feel heavy, every second stretch longer as you try to find a way to make someone, anyone, understand what you're going through. Claudia's letter describes her desperate plea to Pilate, urging him to think twice before condemning Jesus. She tells him about her dream, about the sense of doom she felt, but Pilate, caught up in his own battle with the crowd, could not fully grasp her fear. The crowd outside, their voices growing louder and their demands more insistent, captured his attention as he listened. If you're finding yourself captivated by this story, reflecting on the struggles, the choices, and the untold voices like Claudia's, consider hitting that super thanks button below. Your support enables me to persist in bringing these hidden stories to life, exploring the depths of history and unveiling centuries-old secrets. The trial of Jesus was more than just a legal matter. It was a turning point in history, one that sent ripples through time, changing the course of countless lives. Pilate, as a representative of Roman power, made a choice that seemed to solve a political problem, but instead became a moral quandary that echoes even today. He chose to keep peace with the crowd over listening to the warnings whispered by his wife, a decision that would forever mark him as the man who authorized the crucifixion of Jesus. Claudia's letter gives us a glimpse into the quiet moments behind this monumental decision, a world of dreams and warnings, of desperate pleas and unseen fears. Her warnings fell on deaf ears, but her fear never truly went away. It lingered like a shadow long after the crucifixion had taken place, leaving her to wonder if they had defied a power far greater than Rome itself. Even as the rest of the world moved on, she alone carried the fear that they had unleashed an irreversible fate. This is why Claudia's letter matters, even after all these centuries. It's not just a historical curiosity, it's a story that asks us to reflect on our own lives and our own struggles with doubt and fear. It's a tale about finding ourselves torn between our physical perceptions and our inner perceptions, grappling with decisions that seem to have far-reaching effects. Thanks for watching. Join our community by subscribing to this channel.